Obviously, getting these guys around, just being able to hear to actually game plan against, for another team. We're excited, just ready to get out there on Sunday at 1 o'clock and put the ball down and go.
Welcome in, Falcons fans. It's your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for another Atlanta Falcons video. You know who it is, Miles Garrett, Fox 5 sports anchor reporter on the show. How are you doing today, sir? Welcome back.
Doing great, man. Football is finally back today. Can't wait for Sunday.
Yeah, exciting times, man. Exciting times for football fans all around. And, Miles, this entire offseason for the Falcons has been, I think, a lot of excitement has built. I think a lot of people feel like, you saw at training camp the amount of fans that came out. You saw just, people I feel like are more interactive than usual around this team. There's big questions, but there's also a lot of expectations. And just, I want to go ahead and dive right into it, man. We got to start with the number one guy that people have been talking about all offseason since he was named the starter, QB1 Desmond Ridder. And my question to you is, with everything you've seen, he has the owner's support, coach's support. Everybody says they believe in him. What to you would be a successful season for Desmond Ridder in his first year to say he can be the quarterback next year and years on? And just what do you want to see from him in general?
Well, I think the answer is very simple when it comes to that. This is a playoff-ready roster right now. I don't think it's a Super Bowl-ready roster, but it's a roster very capable of at least making the playoffs and winning the division. I think that is fairly certain at this point, given how weak the NFC South is. Now, all that being said, you just want to see progression. You want to see command of the offense. You want to see he's in control of this offense. We spoke to him yesterday, actually, and he said one of the biggest things about the difference between year one and year two is he kind of let the jitters get the best of him last year in certain scenarios, and who can blame him? His first start was at New Orleans in the Superdome. That's a extremely tough environment for any rookie. Week 2, he goes to Baltimore, another tough environment, the dead of winter, freezing temperature. So again, 2 very hostile environments for a rookie quarterback to be making his first 2 starts. So you got to admit the pregame jitters are probably going to be natural. So that being said, he's had an entire offseason of being the starter, of quote unquote, being the guy for this team. And I think, taking the team to the playoffs is a very easy first step. You certainly just want to see, because again, it's not just Desmond Ridder. You have to look at it from a broad perspective. This is a brand new team from what we saw last year, offensively and defensively. So the big thing offensively is he doesn't need to be Superman. He needs to be in control and distribute the ball. You have 2 stud running backs, arguably 3 stud running backs in your backfield. You've got a bunch of playmakers split out wide between Kyle Pitts, Johnny Smith, Drake London, now Matt Collins. Just a bunch of guys to really get the ball to who are frankly hard to miss. So all that being said, as long as he's able to distribute it and mostly play turnover-free ball, I think that's the most you can expect out of Desmond in year 1. Now, of course, it'd be cool if he turns into this superstar quarterback, which would be, the best possible scenario. But I think it's also important to remain realistic about what he can do and what he should do this year.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, that's part of the growth process. I mean, there's things that, Desmond, he's been very open about what he needs to work on. And there's things that, he thinks that, he'll be able to do this year for this team. Obviously, because you want the confidence of management, you want the confidence of players in him. Calais Campbell's mentioned in the interviews about, hey, Desmond's one of the reasons, I'm excited for him. So I think that's really good just to have someone that, someone who may be considered unproven, but a lot of people want to play with him. So I think that's definitely big for him and his development. And, we only are hoping the best, especially going against Bryce Young and what some people say round 2 of them playing and trying to get each other in their careers.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. I think this is the first time in a while I think there's been high potential for the defense. The defense has not basically been good since the 1 year after the Super Bowl when I think they were ranked top 10, I think that year. Outside of that, it's pretty much been the same issues, pass rush, and just overall just not good. This year under Ryan Nielsen, I think a lot of people are excited about what he's bringing. More of an aggression, more of a fast-paced defense. Players have talked about how much they enjoy it so far. Obviously, we'll be able to see, if Jeff Okudah can play Sunday, we'll be able to see the defense in full capacity this Sunday of what they can look like. What are your expectations for the defense? Do you expect the improvements to come with that pass rush? I think the Falcons may have one of the better underrated secondaries in the league now with Jesse Bates, AJ, Richie Grant. Like I said, Jeff can come back. What just overall, what impact do you think the defense will have this year for this team? Because that could be a big part of them making that playoff push.
Yeah, I think the defense, you hit the nail right in the head. I think the defense is going to end up being the X factor for this team because it's something that we've reported on. I think it's been kind of known now just because of, some preseason games and some stuff that's covered. I think the defensive line is going to be huge for the Falcons this year. They have so many new additions now. They've been definitely a group that has stood out to me the most. And I think the players too. We talked to Drake London about this and we asked him, what has stood out to you? And immediately without even thinking, it was like defensive line. The guys who were just immediately getting in the backfield. We saw the video, granted, we didn't see those starters for all those snaps in the preseason, but for joint practices in Miami, we saw them line up against Miami's first team offensive line, their first team players. And this is a playoff team they're going up against, the Miami Dolphins. They were a very good team last year, and they were dominating as far as in the trenches we're going. Miles Campbell, Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata, those are going to be three playmakers on the defensive line. And frankly, two guys who Grady Jarrett has never really been paired up with. He's never really had those two guys to be paired alongside him. You can argue that, 2016, he had guys like Dwight Freeney and Vic Beasley next to him when Vic Beasley was obviously his all-pro season. But outside of that, he really hasn't had these proven veterans who know what they're doing, who, have proven success in the NFL. So I think all of that combined will create havoc for teams, especially potentially this week with the Panthers, who may or may not, we're not quite sure. All we have to know is we saw in the preseason a struggling offensive line and a rookie quarterback who has physical limitations just because of his height and all that considered. Miles Campbell's 6'8". This is a guy that can make some strong disruptions in the backfield for a game like this. So all that, I think the defensive line is definitely the group I'm going to be looking at the most. You have a new linebacking core. Michael Walker is no longer there. Troy Anderson now is in. You have Bud Dupree now who's in there. Lorenzo Carter is brought back. Caden Ellis from New Orleans. Just a completely new group there in the linebacking core, basically to combine with a new defensive line. And as you said, I think the secondary could also end up surprising some people because we know what AJ Terrell can do. You bring in an all-pro in Jesse Bates to sort of be that quarterback at the back end of the secondary, an ascending talent in Richie Grant, who showed what he could do last year after kind of that redshirt first year. And Jalen Hawkins, who another guy I think people are forgetting about, another great depth guy to have in that secondary. And early on in the preseason, we saw sort of that Jeff Okudah that was drafted so early. It looked like the pressure was kind of taken off Jeff to not be, that number 3 or wherever he was taken overall prospect from Detroit. Now, granted, he did have some injury issues when he was in Detroit, and hopefully that won't hinder him this year. But the early returns for that showed that he looked so comfortable back there. It looked like there was no pressure. It looked like he was just playing ball, kind of like what he was doing back in his Ohio State days. So him and AJ together looks hopefully to be a very strong suit of this team. And can't forget about Clark Phillips either. That's another guy who had some injuries here in training camp, who was looking phenomenal, lining up against Drake London, winning some battles against Drake London, mind you. So it's a group that certainly has a lot of depth, and you just hope that everyone's going to be healthy coming into game 1 on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, a big game there, and just going against the Panthers. So let's go talk about the matchup. So obviously, like you said, struggling offensive line from what we've seen in preseason. Bryce Young has some physical limitations. Last year, when these two teams played, the first game at least was considered one of the best games of the season, just back and forth. And then obviously what happened on the Thursday night debacle there. But obviously things have changed. What would your expectations be going into week 1 for this team going against the Panthers? They're probably still going to want to run the football. They have some injuries in the receiving core, so we don't know how that's going to affect. There's just a lot of unknowns with who they may put on the field Sunday, but just focusing on the Falcons compared to that matchup, what are you thinking? What do you want to see? What do you expect to see from them going against the Panthers?
I want to see them finish in the red zone. That's the issue. We saw it in the one drive we've got for the starters in the preseason against the Bengals. They drove down the field arguably with ease. They got there inside the 20 and they were moving the ball. They were spreading the ball out. We saw Bijan Robinson get a couple carries. We saw Kyle Pitts with a one-handed catch. We saw Drake London with the great sideline catch. We saw Desmond roll out and do checkdowns. We saw basically everything you wanted to see from this new look offense in that drive outside of the touchdown. This was an issue that struck this team last year as far as red zone issues, just settling for a field goal. So that's a big thing I want to see. I want to see them finish drives. I want to see mistake-free football. They had some penalties in that game, that first drive, that were kind of hindering them, and it's something I'm not looking too much into because the guys who got the penalties, Chris Lindstrom, All-Pro, Jake Matthews, Pro Bowl player, these are guys that are not going to have issues, long-term. It's not like we're looking at a Jalen Mayfield type player here. These are proven starters in the NFL, proven stars really in the NFL between Lindstrom and Matthews. So all that being said, I want to see mistake-free football, and I want to see them finish because this is a very, very winnable game and a very strong game to sort of show what you can do. Because again, maybe the Panthers have something that I'm not aware of. That's very possible. The preseason is not real life. That's very important to know. So all that considered, without any other outside knowledge, this is a game the Falcons can really take advantage of and show off what they have, because the NFC South is just so weak this year. I don't see a scenario where any team outside of New Orleans really poses a threat to be a playoff contender this year. I think the Buccaneers are directionless. I think the Saints, I'm just not a big believer in Dennis Allen as a head coach. I think they have a lot of uncertainty there, between Mike Thomas, Alvin Kamara. They lose Ryan Nielsen to us. You get Caden Ellis gone. You lose David Onyemata. Just a bunch of guys who are gone there. And then the Panthers, who I think are promising, but I think they're a year or two behind the Falcons in their rebuild process. I think the Falcons are finally in that era where, yes, we're ready to compete now. The last 2 years, you can kind of really draw to a mulligan just because of the cap space issues. So now I think is the time where the Falcons can really show what team they truly are.
Yeah, definitely. I think, that expectation is going to be big. I mean, we've heard multiple players around the teams talk about we plan to play more than 17. We're planning to go further. We're planning to, get ourselves ready for that long haul. So
Calais Campbell, a Hall of Fame player, is not coming to the Falcons without the expectation of playing postseason football.
Exactly. He wouldn't come here unless he thought that. So, I think that in of itself just kind of shows if that's the mindset of the team. It's just like, okay, because first 2 years you can say we want to compete, but I think you kind of know this is first year everybody's saying it. Like Calais, he wouldn't come here if he wouldn't think that. Maybe even Jesse Bates, he might have came here because he also got paid, but he also was like, I've been on 2 AFC Championship games the last 2 years. I'd like to be able to keep still being able to go deep in the playoffs. So
of course, yeah,
those are the big things there that I look at. So now let's switch the backfield a little bit. Obviously, people have been talking about Bijan. He got Bijan mustard now. You know what I'm saying? I'll send that in the mail for you for Christmas. But we got to talk about the other two because they sometimes get lost. Tyler Algier, Cordell Patterson. Cordell broke out here in Atlanta a couple years ago and really showed the type of player he can be. And Tyler Algier, people forget he broke the Falcons rookie rushing record and didn't even really play to start the season. Yep. So they're very capable. And can you just talk about their roles this year? Because like I said, everybody's been saying Bijan. But how important those two guys are going to be to this offense, because they both still bring elements to the game. Like Cordell's a joker on the depth chart. He's not even, he's just a joker. He's going to be all over the place. And, Tyler Algier, a guy who people don't want to give that respect to as a running back. And I'm like, he's better than what you think. So can you talk about just those two backs and their roles coming into the season? Yeah.
And I think you're right. They are kind of the forgotten aspects of this offense, because here's my thing. I think the folks not around Atlanta, but more of the national folks, when they look at the Falcons depth chart and like, who's their wide receiver too? They really need, that second guy for this team. Mac Hollins, what can he do? We don't really know. And to that, I say, you don't really need it. This is a team that's going to be split out using personnel in a way that is kind of unique. You're going to have Kyle Pitts spread out wide. You're going to have Drake London out there. Cordell Patterson might be split out now because you've got Tyler Algier in the backfield. Bijan Robinson might be split out wide. You got him in the backfield. There's going to be so much mixing and matching with this offense that there's going to be a role for everybody, whether that's Tyler Algier, Bijan Robinson, or Cordell Patterson. Cordell Patterson right now is taking meetings with every position group on that offense, whether that's wide receivers, running backs, fullbacks, tight ends. He's in the room. So that joker position, not quite sure what it is, but to me, it tells me that he's going to be involved in all over the offense. So to say that they're not going to be involved just because you draft Bijan Robinson in the first round is just not true. Because Bijan Robinson was not drafted to replace anybody. He was drafted to enhance it. And you're right. Tyler Algier, this is a guy who broke the rookie rushing record last year. You know, that was the whole argument against Bijan Robinson was, why do you need that? You have a rookie running back who looks like a clear-cut starter right now. You know, you got your guy. You don't really need that. So that being said, I think Tyler Algier, all these guys can be strong red zone options for sure, because we know what kind of a bruiser that Tyler is. He's a big back. He kind of is very physical. Bijan's more of that electrical guy that, you know, that granted, I'm sure we're going to see plenty of in goal line situations. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's going to be the Tyler Algier show constantly. But yeah, no, to long-winded answer for your question, I think we're going to see a good mix of everybody. Just because one's listed above the other in the depth chart doesn't mean we're going to be not seeing the other two.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like you said, they've talked about a lot of positionless football in general, and I think you're going to see that. I mean, I'm thinking of like, you know, potential, you know, sets they could put on the field. I mean, you could literally have Pitts, London, Jonnu Smith, Bijan, and Cordero all out there at once. And
with Algier in the backfield.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like everybody's a threat. Everybody can hurt you. They can go multiple ways. They have 3 running backs. They can run it with any direction. And I think that's what they want to do, put that pressure on the defense, make them have to try to adjust.
It's a mismatch nightmare.
Exactly. And that's what they want to do. And I think that's why they just want Desmond to, you know, hey, we're going to give you mismatches, find the mismatches, and then that can help move.
Someone's going to be open.
And create plays. Like you said, someone's going to be open. We have talent on this team.
And if they're not open, you've got Kyle Pitts, who's 6'5", can run like a deer, can probably win a jump ball. Drake London, 6'4", can probably win a jump ball. You just got a bunch of big targets there who are pretty hard to miss.
And if needed, Desmond can run too. He runs 4.5.
That's true.
So, you know, that's also a threat. So I'll have one more question for you, sir, before I let you go. So let's talk about Arthur Smith. Obviously, this is year 3. This is considered the crucial year for him. You know, you have playoff expectations. You know, from when he started to where he is now, him and Terry have had a plan, knowing with Cap and everything. It's not going to be quick. We may not be good for the first couple of years. We're going to try to compete to be good, just in case you just have one of those seasons. But if not, we want to still continue to develop. And I've always said development is not pretty. Development is not quick all the time. Development is not the most sexiest thing. Sometimes it's going to take some time. And so now that they're entering this 3rd year, can you just give me your overall, just, I guess, reflect on Arthur Smith and kind of coming into this year? He seems to me more, it's crazy. It feels like he's more laid back this year. I don't know if you've noticed that. He seems more just like, hey, man, just trying to get the team ready to go this year. Like there's a difference. Like there's a confidence there. So can you just talk about that? Talk about Arthur Smith going to the 3rd year, a crucial year for him in the regime of Terry.
100%. Yeah, no, and you're right. He's told us in interviews this is the most fun he's had coaching. You know, entering year 3, and for good reason. I mean, he finally has his team. Mm-hmm. You know, it's so important to note. People always forget. Again, this is, I think, more of a national perspective of the Falcons, but you have to keep in mind what Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot were working with these last 2 years. They were not able to sign anybody. You know, you've been working off of 1-year rentals the last 2 years, and basically guys who were already there from the old regime, who, you know, when a new coach, new GM comes in, you want your own guys, you want your new team. That's why you hire these guys, because you want to bring in change. So that change wasn't really able to arrive when they first got here. So this is a roster that, let's be honest, the last 2 years has been projected, we've all seen it, to win 1 or 2 games, and he's squeezed 7 wins out of them. So, and again, with rental players, arguably, you know, he's squeezed 7 wins with Marcus Mariota, Cordero Patterson, who didn't even play running back before he arrived to Atlanta. He was moved there. Year 1 without Calvin Ridley, your top receiving threat. I mean, I can go on and on. You know, the defense is completely brand new. I mean, the defense isn't even the same players you have. I mean, Brady Jarrett and AJ Terrell are really the only 2 holdovers from that year 1, which was just 2 years ago. You know, it isn't that long ago. So all that considered, I mean, Vegas believes it. I think he's got the highest odds right now, or one of, to win Coach of the Year, because we've seen the Falcons were in every single game last year, arguably up until the last drive or two, outside of maybe Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. Every single game they were in. and that was with the worst roster in the National Football League. So you have a roster now with all these new toys on offense, this new influx of talent on the defense, a new defensive coordinator who's kind of bringing in some new life. I think Dean Pease set a great foundation for these guys, and I think Ryan Nielsen's sort of there to take it to the next level. And you've got just excitement around the team that you just haven't had. And I think that's a huge part of why Arthur Smith's aura, for lack of a better term, has changed this offseason, because for good reason. You got to put yourself in his shoes. Think about, the questions you're going to get those first 2 years. It's, why aren't you winning games? What are you doing? When are you going to put in Desmond? When are you going to put in the backup quarterback? What are you going to do? Why aren't you throwing it to Pitts? All this kind of stuff. I'm sure he's probably not going to be coming in with the best mood. You guys lose another game the same way you lost the last one. Now, important to note, if we see more of the same this year, then those questions will be very, very valid. But at the end of the day, it's a brand new team, and it's finally the team that Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith have really wanted and have been able to put together. And also, very important to note, they have more money to spend next offseason too. It's not just this year. It's not just this is the year that we're getting all these players. They're going to get some more next year. So it's just important to be patient. I think it's very much an industry now that has a lack of patience. You get that first year, if a coach doesn't have immediate change like that, they're fired and the new guy is brought in. I really do admire the patience that Arthur Blank has had with these guys. And also important to note that when they were first hired, Arthur Blank has said this himself, that these first 2 years are going to be tough, with salary cap, I'm going to put it in the words of Arthur Blank, that Arthur Smith, Terry Fontenot, we're going to put a competitive product on the field. But year 3 is when we'll be ready to take that next step. Lo and behold, 2 7-10 seasons, they were competitive when many people thought they weren't going to be competitive. And now we've arrived at year 3, and suddenly everyone's in a good mood. So I think that it's okay to sort of trust the process in this scenario, because everything up until this point has kind of been on track with what the plan supposedly was that was told to Arthur Blank. So who are we to question it if so far it seems like it's on track?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's big. Just, to have, like I said, you have that vision, because every coach, when you hire them, has a vision. They want to have a vision that they can put out on the field. And now they probably feel like you said, this is the first time we can actually do that. They've kind of had to say, we got to makeshift the car. We got to kind of fix it up to run. But eventually, in a couple of years, we'll be able to get the car we want. And now they feel like they have that right now. And they'll be excited to see, okay, now the vision has been in their head on paper, on the roster play out. How does it play out on the field? So that's exciting.
It goes even as simple as like the first year of this regime. When you look at Tyler, Cordero Patterson was the breakout player that first year. And you're like, whoa, like he can do this with Cordero Patterson. Now suddenly Cordero Patterson is the third option on this team. That first year, he was the one option on this team, because Mike Davis, let's be honest, was a little bit of a disappointment when he was in Atlanta. Now Cordero Patterson is number 3. You could argue that Bijan Robinson is your Derrick Henry, quote unquote, for this offense, because that's what Arthur Smith did in Tennessee. He turned Derrick Henry. You could say, obviously we know the kind of talent Derrick Henry is. He's remained elite ever since Arthur Smith has left, but the Titans really took that next step in their offense under Arthur Smith with Derrick Henry. So I'm excited to see what he can do with Bijan Robinson.
Definitely, for sure. Can I get a prediction for the game on Sunday? Can you give me that?
Man, oh dear. Predictions are always scary. I'm going to go 28-14 Falcons.
Okay. Hey, if that ends up being the case, we're going to be having a grand day on Twitter that day, my friend.
It's about time. Time.
For sure. Get the positivity going in the community, man. But, hey, Miles, I appreciate you coming on, man. I appreciate you talking some Falcons with me, man. It's always great having you on. Always a good friend of the show, man. Let people know where they can find you before we get out of here.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I post most of my work stuff on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it today. My handle is at Miles Garrett TV. Starting to post a lot more on Instagram as well. My handle there is at Miles M. Garrett. And as well, you can watch me on Fox 5. You just want to watch TV on there pretty frequently. We do Three different Falcon shows. We have Early Birds, which airs Saturday mornings. We have Rise Up Tonight, which airs Friday at midnight, and we have the Dirty Bird Report, which airs Sundays at 11:30 at night. If the game is on Fox at a 1 o'clock kick, we will have a fifth quarter. So it's a quick little post-game show. So we do a lot there. Also, if you're a big fan of the Georgia Bulldogs, we are now the official partner of the Georgia Bulldogs, in addition to being partners with the Falcons. So we do a lot of Georgia content. I host the post-game show called Bulldogs Final, which is also on Fox 5. We have analysis with Kirby Smart, DJ Shockley, whole 9 yards. So that's where you can find what we're doing.
Yes, sir. Hey, man. See, this man works hard. He does a lot of things for the community, man. So, like I said, Miles, appreciate you coming on, man. And Falcon fans, we'll have to see what happens Sunday. Really exciting time. I know football is back, so let's go ahead and enjoy it while we're here. So, Bryce Lewis, Miles Garrett. We'll see you next time.